Something I've come to experience and learn about in little bits and pieces along the path of my rising in knowledge, which means a lot of reading, a lot of listening to lectures, a lot of taking in information from people who are more knowledgeable than me. It's been a lot of information. I've studied a lot of genres of knowledge, from the esoteric to what's going on in the world, government, how America worked out, just so many genres of information, conspiracy theories, all this stuff. And when you do it long enough, you start learning things. You start seeing things. Patterns start to form. The perspective and perception that you have about the world and how it works changes dramatically. And what it does is it then begins to fly in the face of the accepted consensus version of reality that everybody subscribes to. And when you present things to people that defy that consensus version of reality that everyone subscribes to, when you're presenting them the ideas that the reality that they live in is far different, that doesn't fit into the box that most people's minds have been placed in at a very young age and then filled in with all of the shit that we've gotten from religion, from the television, from propaganda, from the government and school systems and all these other things that like to condition our minds and tell us what things are, how things are, and guide, sway, and direct us away from anything that resembles tapping into our true selves and becoming realized human beings. So it's a very isolating thing because people begin to look at you like a know-it-all. People begin to look at you or make assumptions that you're arrogant, and lots of other labels, because when you take in so much knowledge in an effort to try and figure out the nature of what this thing is, you recognize that not too many people out there are truly doing that. Therefore, the degree of, the level of, the quality of, and the amount of, whatever, all that stuff, information that you will take in and learn is going to far surpass the herd. By no ill-intended thing you've done, by taking in all this information to learn the nature of this fucking reality and how all this shit works, you will take in more information than just about most people you know and essentially have the effect of separating yourself from the herd. It makes it very difficult to look at people the same way. Not because they're stupid, because you can then begin to see how they're seeing what they're seeing, why they're seeing it, because they're coming from a very limited and myopic perspective. Not that there's anything wrong with them, it's that they just don't possess the knowledge yet. And when you don't possess the knowledge, it really constricts and confines, for the most part, your perspective. Think about that for a second. I mean, I think there is not maybe a one-to-one correlation, but there is a pretty close correlation to the level of knowledge that you possess and how broad and how wide your perception your perception is. I may not be stating that exactly right. I hope you get what it is I'm trying to say. Taking in too much knowledge, taking in too much information in an effort to simply try and understand the nature of what the fuck this thing is can be a blessing and a curse all in disguise. It can be a very painful thing. The more you see, the more you know. You can't unknow. You can never go back to the way you were. Your perception, you know what I mean? It's a double-edged sword in a lot of respects, because there are changes that will take place in you that you could not foresee or have anticipated, but generally, prior to going in, prior to taking the deep dives that give you the perspective that show you there's more to this reality. You know, there's it's interesting how sheep-like most of us are, because we're given this body of knowledge, this information that I call our indoctrination when we're young and impressionable and through kindergarten, through 12th grade. And then we go out into the world like good little slaves with the information we have. And so few people, not everybody, but so few people begin to ask bigger questions and not see or somewhere inside them begin to say, isn't there more than this? This is kind of, really. That's it, more or less. If you're on a path of learning, whether it's law or anything, you learn too much law and you understand how the system works too much, and you start talking to your friends about shit and they have no concept of it, they're going to think you're that fringe guy. They're going to think there's something wrong with you. They're going to attach some label to you that helps them make sense of the fact that you're talking about all kinds of shit and you're serious about it that they don't understand. You're going to get the same thing when you start talking about the nature of reality, the fact that aliens genetically modified us or created us from scratch using their genetic DNA. When you're talking to Christians and Muslims and other people that are religious and stuck in that religious dogma of a savior and a deity and a messiah and a prophet and this God, and you're going to get it. You're going to get it because you've risen to a level of knowledge and awareness. And On some levels, as you do that, your consciousness is going to follow suit. Or maybe your consciousness that's rising, that leads you into the research, into the knowledge, and that helps you to rise in awareness. It's going to be an evolutionary process for the individual in everybody's unique way, but generally it's painful. Evolution is painful. I would liken the experience to rising in knowledge, awareness, and consciousness, especially if you come from functionally brain dead, which is where I started from before this process. The process of going through this can be very much, I really did. I started from functionally brain dead. I had 35 years of head buried, and I mean this to the truest sense of the word. So if you ever heard me talk critically about people being dumbass and brain dead and head in their ass, I'm coming from a perspective of the fact that I'm not excluding myself from the fact that I used to be those people, but head buried firmly in ass. What force it was, whether it was my own soul or consciousness, that grabbed me forcefully by the shoulders and yanked my head out of my ass and began to shake me forcefully and say, "Wake the fuck up!" I do not know. I do not know. I do not know if it was just my path in life. I do not know. But it happened. It was slow at first. Because I tell you, the human can't take too much too fast. It's too much for the paradigm, especially when you're at a lower stage or level of consciousness or awareness. You can't have your paradigm fracture too much too fast. It's not until you rise enough in the process that all of a sudden you recognize that your paradigm has fractured, because you're beginning to question the bigger things, and then all of a sudden it shatters, it breaks, and you reform it again, you see it shatter and break again, and then all of a sudden you become used to it. And then, if you're anything like me, you'll subscribe to the philosophy that everybody should walk around with a fucking sledgehammer, so the metaphorical sledgehammer, and every time they see a piece of paradigm forming around them where they have a belief system, they shatter that son of a bitch, because they're pretty rigid. Because as you dive through learning and your awareness rises and you become more in tune with some of the deeper things that are going on in this experience, all of a sudden your perspectives begin to shift dramatically. And the process for me, or for a lot of people, is painful. Has been painful for me, and for a lot of people will be painful. Like a butterfly, the process to become that beautiful creature. You were a caterpillar. Let's call that the low-level consciousness, the head-in-ass state. And you go into this process of learning and evolving your levels of knowledge and awareness, and your consciousness is rising. And all. Maybe that's you in the cocoon. And it's a struggle, because the veil's torn off your eyes. You get to see the world for what it really is. You recognize that the rest of the world doesn't see these things. And this process begins to take place. It's very painful. It's very painful. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle to sometimes find your place within all of this, so that you can still fit in as much as you need to live and be here, sort of buying or going to your own island, where everybody's wide awake and just, having a big love-in. I don't know what else to do, except you get to a point where you go through these phases of rising, seeing it all, getting angry, getting pissed, ready to, leave America, for instance, and then you're like, fuck it, it's my home. You go through these stages of this. It's almost like grieving. It's gonna have to go through its stages and phases before you get through it. The same thing with this rising in knowledge, awareness, and bringing your consciousness with you, or vice versa. Your consciousness rising, bringing your knowledge and awareness with you. The process is painful sometimes, a lot of times, because when you begin to see how much different the nature of this thing is, whether it's the way government works, the world works, the nature of this reality, what created us, the religious dogma bullshit, and on and on and on, it's painful. Because all of this stuff that I'm referring to so defies the paradigm we've all been given, the box that most of us have been put in, the knowledge that's been given to us that we've been confined to for the most part. It defies all of that. And then people realize that they've got to get out of the box, which is their comfort zone. And in order to actually truly learn and evolve, you've got to get out of the box, so that you're no longer influenced by the information that's contained in the box. Because if you think you can learn while still contained in the box, learning outside of the box or thinking outside of the box, you're sadly mistaken. Because you're still going to be influenced by the information contained in the box, whether it's dogmatic bullshit or shit your parents put in your head or shit somebody else put in your head. I tell you, the more you learn, the more you're going to have to adjust your perception. Your interpretation of how this all works, what's truly going on, what's at the core of it all, and things of that nature. And that's all going to be predicated on how deep in this journey of figuring it all out you really want to go. All I know is the Kardashians' butts and the baby bumps and the Jenners and the reality shows and the sports and the ridiculous, mind-blowingly brain-dead, zombified, low IQ, dumb you down, all kinds of shit they're feeding the world. I just can't do that. I can't do it. I have friends that are otherwise very intelligent people that watch TV all the time. I don't see how they can do it. I don't see how they can't begin to question the nature of this thing, because things are so fucked up. It's not even funny. It begins to make a thinking man wonder how the rest of the world, literally how the rest of the world is not sitting there scratching their head deep in contemplation about what the fuck is going on here. I mean, think about it. Anyway, this was supposed to be a 5-minute one, but it's a little longer. Anyway, just a little mind dump for a Saturday afternoon. Have a good one. Take care.